Good people. How y'all doing today? I'm waiting for some people to come into the room. Come on in for Facebook Live chat, our power chat for today. Awesome. Can't wait to begin to share this conversation with you. I'm excited about it. Cheryl, thank you for joining me today. Naomi, thank you for joining me. Hey guys, we're going to be talking about a really juicy topic that we started last week. As you guys come in, don't forget to invite someone to join you. Make sure you share that you're on and invite someone to join you in this conversation. I'm not going to be on here long, but I just wanted to come by, recap, and give you something new to think about as you go into the rest of your week. All right, come on in. Thank you so much. How you guys doing? Aja, thank you so much for joining us. How you guys doing? Hope you're enjoying this wonderful, pleasant weather Tuesday in New York City. I hope where you guys are, there's also pleasant weather. We're gonna jump right into this. We talked about this topic last week. I'm gonna touch base on it again, and then we're gonna dive just a little bit deeper. Because I believe that this has been a blessing. This has struck a chord with so many people, and I want to continue to build on that momentum so that we can all be free from stagnation and we can all move forward with what God is calling us to do. All right, come on and invite, share. Let people know that you're on as we get ready to jump right on in. We're on. Hey. Take some time to invite somebody. Great, guys. Great. All right. Thank you guys again for joining me today. We're going to jump. Hi, Cassandra, Katrina. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you're enjoying your day. We're going to get started because I want to talk to you about this stagnation. I want to talk to you about success because I believe that both are part of our journey. Hi. Both are a part of our journey, and it's important for us to understand each and every moment as we go along. Katrina, thank you for joining me. Asia, thank you for joining me. Awesome, guys. Thank you guys for joining me. All right, so let's jump in. Don't forget during this Facebook Live, you can invite people. You can hit invite, and then you can start inviting people. Cassandra, thank you for joining me. Brian, thank you for joining me. Shaquana, thank you for joining me. Make sure that you share this with others so that they can be a part of this conversation, because it's important that we get the word out as much as possible. Why? Because we want to move. We want to shift. And that's what we talked about last week. We talked about the shift from stagnation to success. And we're going to build on that and keep going a little bit deeper into what we need to do, right? Because when you apply God's principles, you'll see God's power. And we want to be able to apply the principles so we can see the results that we want to see. All right, great. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Chanel Ramsay. I'm a leadership coach. I'm also the CEO and founder of Power Up Urban Leadership Network, which the Lord gave me about 4 or 5 years ago. We started Power Up Network, and the purpose of Power Up and that network of ministry leaders is to fill the empowerment gap. What I realized is the Lord started dealing with me about Nehemiah chapter 4. And he began to talk to me about Nehemiah chapter 4 and say to me that, hey, there's a gap in the body of Christ between when a person is called and when they're appointed or assigned something in ministry to do. And that gap is that training period, that empowerment period. So many people find themselves operating in ministry but have never been trained or properly trained. They had what we call hands-on training, where someone is put in a position, but then they'll just say, okay, just let God lead you. And they're left out there to fend for themselves. Thank you, Stacy, for joining us. Shane for joining us today. And so thank you, Yolanda, for joining today. And so what happens is we get into this place in ministry and we find ourselves so frustrated. We find ourselves in this place where we want to do right. We want to do good. Our heart is right towards the work, but how to perform that which is good, Paul said, we don't find it. And so we find ourselves in ministry with a heart to do do what's right, but we're ill-equipped for it. And so the Lord gave me this vision of a power up to help fill that gap, because what I realize in ministry, there are avoidable mistakes. We do not have to learn everything by trial and error. There are some things that we could avoid if someone just shares a story about their journey and how they got from where they are to where they need to be. We can learn a lot from each other. And so I started that organization called Power Up. You can find us on Facebook. Make sure you like our Facebook page. You follow us on Twitter or Instagram to stay updated with everything that's going on. And so while I'm saying that, I want to make sure that I invite you guys all out. If you are a ministry leader, I want to invite you to our Ministry Leaders Mixer. It's for networking and games. Why? Because leaders need to let their hair down. They need a safe space where they can have fun, enjoy each other, and enjoy meeting new people that are doing what you're doing. We are many members, but one body. So I invite you. The event is free. Appetizers for that evening, unlimited appetizers, is just $5. And we're going to have fun, and we're going to meet new people. And we're going to begin to build a network, build a community of leaders where we can begin to learn from each other. And I think that's so significant, especially living in the day and time that we're in. So we're going to be talking about a hot topic today. And like I always say each and every week that I'm on here, I want to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Pastor Bradley's on, Nevia is on, Asia is on. Thank you guys for joining me. What I always tell people is I do not consider myself a leadership expert, but I do my homework. I don't share anything with you that I do not have proof of concept for. I don't share anything with you that I have not thoroughly researched. I don't consider myself a leadership expert. I'm just a good student. I learn the lesson, and whatever lesson I learn, I try to share it so that you can be better at what you're doing. And so we've been talking about this topic of stagnation, moving from stagnation to success. And I'm going to jump right in this thing because I don't know about you. Have you ever felt frustrated with your dreams not being fulfilled? You're dealing with teams, you're working with a group of people, but there's always excuses. You're trying to accomplish something, but it just keeps eluding you. The success keeps eluding you. And you feel like you want to give up. You're in that place where you're frustrated. Things are not moving the way you thought they were going to move. Have you ever been there? Because if you have, I want to talk to you about this thing called stagnation. I want to talk to you about this because when we start to look at it, we'll be able to see that there is a plan and a purpose, and then there's a way out. And so I want to talk to you about that. So I'm going to recap from last week. If you guys are with me, why don't you give me a thumbs up so I know that you're with me in this. We're going to move from stagnation to success. And last week we talked about the shift, how to shift from stagnation to success. Because again, if we are going to accomplish what God has called us to accomplish, then we have to move from this place called stagnation. And so last week we talked about the 5 S's, right? The 5 X's. We talked about success, significance, survival, strategy, and stagnation. We talked about success, significance, survival, strategy, and stagnation. So I'm just going to recap a little bit to make sure that we're all moving in the same vein. And so some of the points we talked about last week was with success. And one of the things I said was success destroys the unprepared. Success destroys the unprepared. Now, I know that sounds crazy because we all want that big moment to happen where we finally reach our goal and there's a fulfillment of such. But if you do not prepare for that which you are asking for, it has the potential to destroy you. We talked about this with 1 Kings chapter 18. Remember with Elijah. Now here it is. They're in a drought. They're in this famine. And he goes and he says, tell King Ahab that it's going to rain. And in this process, he said to him, he says, it's going to rain. But he told King Ahab something specific. He says, get down from here unless the rain stop you. Now that's interesting. Let's look at that. He was saying the very thing you've been waiting for, if you don't get in proper position for it, if you don't prepare for it, it has the ability to stop you. And so what we don't realize is that sometimes we are praying for things, but we're not preparing for things. You have to prepare for that which you have prayed for. Isaiah 54 said it like this: strengthen your stakes, right? Expand your territory. He says, get ready for the increase that you're expecting me to send. And that preparation is also an act of faith. So if you are in a place of stagnation, but you believe that God is about to shift you from stagnation to success, how are you preparing for it? Sometimes with stagnation, what it is it's a lot mentally more than it is anything else. Because if you can shift your mind to begin to think about the future and where God has you and not your current state, you'll begin to revive the dream within you to move forward. Okay? So we talked about that. We talked about significance. How do you measure success? How do you measure success? Success should be measured by significance and sustainability. That's really huge. Success should be measured by significance and sustainability, not notoriety, right? Because you could be famous and still not successful. You could be famous and still not fulfill your purpose. So how do you move? You got to tap into significance. What is significant for your life? What has God called you to do? So we talked about how to measure success in a healthy way. If we don't define success, we'll never know when we arrive at success. You have to define it. What does it look like for me to be successful? And some of us are not successful because we're still in survival mode. God did not create us to stay in survival mode. Survival might be success during a crisis, but it's failure over the long haul. You're not designed to stay in survival mode and yet achieve success. You've got to shift. If you're in a crisis, it's understandable that you're in survival mode. But once that crisis is over, you have to shift gears. And I think so many of us get stuck in that survival mode, living from paycheck to paycheck, just trying to pull things together, last minute events, last minute things that we're doing. No, you have to move from that, because if not, you're going to be committed to something called the tyrant of urgency. Okay? And you don't want to be tied to everything as an urgency. Everything is an urgency, because what happens is you wear yourself out, especially as leaders. We talked about strategy, right? Because meaningful success requires strategy. You can't have a business idea or ministry idea and don't apply strategy. Hope is not strategy. Hope is good. It makes us not ashamed. All that good stuff, but hope is not strategy. It's not enough to just hope for a win. You got to strategize to win. So meaningful success requires strategy. Strategy includes thinking about the future, but effective strategy is executed in the present. So many of us get caught up right here in our heads. We keep thinking about what we're going to do. And what happens is stagnation loves it when you're always getting ready to do something, but never doing it. That is stagnation. Always getting ready to do something, but never doing it. That's procrastination. And it likes to mask itself. Procrastination likes to mask itself as preparation, but it's really not. It's really not. And so if you want to start to see forward movement, you got to strategize for your next step. And then we talked about stagnation. The reason why some of us are stagnant is because we're pouring energy into the same strategy. We have to stop defending what isn't working. When we realize, hey, this is not giving me the results that I'm looking for, then it's time for me to shift. I can't keep doing the same thing the same way and expect a different result. How do I move from stagnation to success? I need a strategy. Strategies are always implemented all throughout the scripture. God is a master strategist. Jesus was a strategist. What they did was intentional. And strategies change from battle to battle. You can't go into a new fight with an old strategy. That might not work. For instance, let's look at the children of Israel. We talked about this example last week. Children of Israel, to cross the Red Sea, they needed a rod. But to get into Jericho, they needed a shout. There was two different strategies he gave them. He said, okay, get to the Red Sea, stretch out your rod. He parted the Red Sea, they walked over. But to get into Jericho, you don't need a rod for that one. That's a new fight. That's a new challenge. It requires a new strategy. And some of us are stagnant because we keep using old strategies to move forward. I felt that for somebody. We're using old strategies to move forward. You have to adapt a new strategy. Your ministry is growing. You can't use the same strategy. You have more people seeking after you. You can't use the same strategy. What worked for a storefront is not going to work for a mega church, for instance. Okay, there are certain times and seasons in your life. Even in prayer, your strategy has to change. You have to begin to adapt. You have to begin to discern first and then adapt. Okay, I discern this is what's going on. Now, Father, what is the strategy you want me to apply to see victory in this particular area? God is saying you're not shifting. You're not going to be able to shift from stagnation to success if you refuse to download his new strategy. You have to get a download of the new strategy that God is saying, apply this strategy as a means of escape from this season of stagnation. So right now, I want you guys to begin to think, okay, Father, I've been doing this the same way all the time. And you can't defend it if it's not working. You can't defend it if it's not working. If it's not working, it's not working. It doesn't reflect on you being bad or you not doing something right. It's just say, hey, this is a moment for me to hit the refresh button. Let me get a new strategy. Let me download this again and say, okay, Father, what's the strategy now to get from this place that I'm in to where you're calling me to be? Stagnation is not of God. So let's talk about what stagnation means. Oh, yes, I'm going to get you jumping ahead of me, Asia. You jumping ahead of me. I'm coming there. Okay, she says, but what do you do when you're waiting on an answer from God during times of stagnation? We're going to talk about that in just a second. So let's talk about this right here. I want you guys at this very moment, why don't you take the time to invite someone to share this with somebody? Because I want to see as many people get out of that stuck place and move into the place where God is calling them. Invite this with someone. Let them know that you're on with Leadership Coach Ramsay, and we're talking about how to move from stagnation to success. We're talking about these 5 S, and then we're going to jump into the 5 Ds. But for now, we're talking about these 5 S's: success, significance, survival, strategy, and stagnation. So some of us are stagnant. Make sure you get this. To be stagnant means that you're inactive, slow moving. Come on now. Some of y'all slow to obey. Slow moving. It's like having the flat, like a flat tire, okay? It means that stagnation also means dying, but not yet dead. It's characterized by the lack of development, advancement, or progressive movement. Is characterized by the lack of development, advancement, or progressive movement. Do you realize that you could be stagnant in one area before moving forward in another? You could be progressive in one area of your life, but then another area is like on pause. That happens. But you have to be able to identify, like I said, this is the area that's been stagnant. There's inactivity. It's not moving. It's lacking something. And it also means to have no current flow. To have no current flow. Some of us, especially those of you who are in ministry, your psalmists, your ministers of the gospel, honey, you can't do this without a current flow. You can't do his work without him. And so many times when we're in stagnation, we end up working for him, but not with him. You have to co-labor with Christ, co-labor with the Holy Spirit. Like Pastor Courtney was saying this morning, we have to come into agreement with him so that there is a current flow. It says when you are stagnant, there's no current flow, there's no activity, you are dull. And the Bible talks about that, being dull of hearing. You are dull, you are sluggish. You are sluggish. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, because I really want to talk to you about this shift. Because if you're going to shift from stagnation to success, it requires a strategy. And God is saying, I want to give you a new strategy. I want to give you a new strategy. It's not going to happen because you prayed for a shift. It's going to happen because when you prayed for a shift, you sat there and waited till he released that strategy. And when you apply the strategy, you will see the success you are looking for. And this is something that I always encourage leaders to do, because sometimes we don't autopsy and we don't evaluate the things that we're doing in ministry. We don't take a minute to take a step back so we can take an effective step forward. Sometimes taking that step back might seem like stagnation. However, it's not stagnation. It's your preparation for what you've been asking for. We talked about earlier, if you want success, then you got to prepare for success, because success has the potential to destroy an unprepared person. Have you ever watched that show, How Lottery Ruined My Life? Like, there's a show that talks about how people won the lottery, but then after they won the lottery, they talk about all of these things that went wrong in their lives. Like, they couldn't manage this, and people were taking advantage of them, and they were going through all of these changes. Why? Because they got something they never prepared for. If you believe in what you pray for, then your faith response is, because I believe that, now I'm going to now prepare for it. Isaiah 54, we talked about that. He says, okay, I'm sending increase. Strengthen your stake. Expand your borders. Prepare for the increase you're asking me for. Why? Because if you're going to move from stagnation to success, you got to shift. And the only way to shift is to begin to receive the new strategy. You cannot apply the old strategy to a new fight. It requires a new strategy. And so we see this time and time again, God giving strategy. We look at Deborah and Barak. What did he do? He said, okay, you're going to go and you're going to have this fight, but this is what you need to do. These are the instructions. This is the strategy. With King Jehoshaphat, 2 Chronicles 20, he told him, he said, this is the strategy. Go up, stand ye still, see the salvation of the Lord. That was the strategy. He gave them a command. Send Judah first. That is the strategy. You have to download the new strategy. Why? Because when you feeling stagnant, that means there's no current flow. There's no activity. It means when you're stagnant, you're dying, but not yet dead. That's a horrible situation to feel like you're in. But I want to talk to you real briefly, because I was just thinking about this earlier today, and I said, you know what? Here's the thing. Some of us who think we're stagnant, some of us who think we're in stagnation, you're not really in stagnation. You're in the staying place of God. You're in the waiting room of God. And so it feels like stagnation. See, you got to be so careful that you don't misdiagnose the situation that you are currently in. Some of us are not in stagnation. We're just in the waiting room of God. We're just in the waiting room. We're in that holding pattern. God has us in that place because we're in the staying place of God, not in the stagnation place of the enemy. You got to know the difference. And so some of us feel stagnant because we don't see movement. We don't see anything happening, but something great is on the way. I remember when I was in Bible school, and they were teaching us about the 400 years of silence between Malachi and Matthew. It might have looked like during that period of time that God had abandoned his people, that there was nothing going to happen. There would be no breakthrough. But oh my God, what he had on the way was bigger than anything they could have imagined in the book, the first part of the Bible, right? In Malachi, they were sitting there, they had all of that. And then here comes this period of silence. There's no activity. Nothing seems like it's moving. It feels like God is not speaking. It seems as if things are not turning around, that there is no breakthrough. But lo and behold, God had Jesus on the way. And the Bible says when the fullness of time had come, here he is releasing this powerful word, the seed of God into Mary to bring forth the solution that they've been waiting for. He gave a new strategy. He said, okay, the Old Testament, this is the strategy I used then, but Jesus is my new strategy. To get rid of sin, it can't be by bullocks. It can't be by those burnt offerings. He says, I need something that has sustainability, right? If I want to see success, it is about significance and sustainability. Here is Jesus now. He is the ultimate sustainability of God. His offering speaks generations later. The blood is still working. That's the sustainability of God. So God implemented a new strategy by giving Mary a seed. He gave the earth. He said, look, I tried to deal with the sin problem one way, but now I'm going to apply a new strategy. And so when we start thinking about that and just meditate on that, even though it seemed quiet for those years between Malachi and Matthew, this seemed like God wasn't moving. There was no activity. It wasn't that God wasn't moving. Some of us are not stuck. We're just in the staying place of God. We're just in the waiting room. And that waiting room could be a long time. It doesn't feel comfortable. When you go to the hospital, you go into the emergency room, you got to sit in that waiting room, honey. You looking around at everybody. You wondering where they're going to call your number. You know, it's one of the things we hate doing. Oh, don't go to the DMV and have to wait. Oh, Lord, have mercy. It's like, okay, I'm just going to leave and come back another day. And that's what we want to do. We want to abandon the process. But it's not about what we achieve. It's about who we become in the process. You cannot skip this process. So some of us are not stagnant. We're just in a staying place. We're just in the waiting room. And if you misdiscern or misdiagnose and you don't rightly discern the moment, you will miss the message and you will miss out on what God has for you. So some of us are not stagnant in the way that we believe we are. And the way that we believe we are. And she says, so the question was, what do you do when you're waiting on an answer from God during the times of stagnation? That's what you do. You wait. You wait. And sometimes, again, it's not an answer we're waiting for. It's a strategy. It's a strategy. And always go back to what he said last. What did he say last to do? Have you activated the last instruction? Because that obedience can release the next level of strategy. If you have not activated your last place of obedience, don't expect a new answer. Because it's all a part of the process. It's all part of the process. So don't misdiagnose your season of stagnation versus the season of waiting. Some of us are just waiting, but the longer the wait, the greater the reward. You only pull things back so that it can reach further out. It's called the law of trajectory. When God pulls you back, it's only to shoot you further. So don't miss out on that process because he's preparing you for that which is before you, what you're about to walk into next. So you can't allow the enemy to take advantage of the stagnation or to move in and make you lose faith during that season. So, and then some of us, I want to talk about this, and then I'm going to close with this thought. Some of us are in stagnation because we've abandoned the work. We've abandoned the work. There is a work that God has called us to do that we have abandoned that work. We are doing it, but our heart has left it. We are doing it, but our passion is not in it. Because of the frustration. And it's nothing like the frustration of trying to achieve a God thing, but you're doing it without God. Trying to achieve a God goal, a God-given dream, but you find yourself in a place where you're not seeing the results that you want to see. There's nothing like that level of frustration, so I get it. But some of us are doing it for him without him. Some of us are seeing we're in this place of stagnation because we've abandoned the work. We have left our post because of offense. Some of us have abandoned the work because of offense. Some of us have abandoned the work because of frustration. Some of us have abandoned the work because we are tired of not seeing what we want to see and not getting the results we want to get. And we're in the position, but we're not executing it with power. And so we got to be so careful that if we're starting to see signs of stagnation in our life, we have to go back and we got to research, okay, what was my last instructions? If I'm going to shift, what is the new strategy? Father, give us a new strategy so we know how to shift from stagnation to success. Now, I started thinking about that because I realized that even I was reading the scripture the other week where, you know, we're very familiar with that story where the space was too small for the prophets. And they said, okay, this space is too small. We're gonna build a new space. So they got the green light to go build this new space. And it says while he was chopping, he lost the axe head, right? We know that story about losing the axe head. But that was a moment where he could have abandoned the work. He could have said, I done lost the axe head. I'm out. I can't do nothing else. It's not working. It's not working. I don't have what it takes. I don't have the tools I need to perform the task I'm supposed to perform. I don't have the support. I'm out. They don't understand. You know, all the things we do, all the things we say. He could have abandoned the work at that moment, but he didn't. He went and he got some help. And then the Lord restored that axe head. And he was able to complete the assignment. And so I'm believing God today for your restoration. I'm believing God today for your new strategy. Because if you're going to shift from stagnation to success, then you have got to download the new strategy of God. so that you can move forward. Because it's not about what you achieve, it's about who you become on the way to what you achieve. And so there's been many things we talked about, and I think that's what I've given you is enough, because if you start to really dive in and really say, okay, I'm in this place of stagnation, I need a new strategy. Remember, sometimes God answers prayer by releasing strategy. It's not always a yes or no kind of answer. Sometimes it's about, okay, there's a new instruction. Because it's a new fight, you need a new strategy. You can't bring the old strategy. What isn't working, it just isn't working. Okay, and so the opposite of forward is stagnation. If you're not moving forward, you are in stagnation, and you need to evaluate why. What is God doing in this moment, and how do I shift? Because sometimes it's about a lesson. It's about what God wants to show you in that process and who you're being equipped to bring out. So I want you to keep those things in mind. There are 4 forms of stagnation that destroys leaders. There are 4 forms of stagnation that destroys leaders. I'm going to leave you with this, because we lose a lot of people in ministry. They leave our teams. They don't commit to us. They don't commit to the work. And it's not necessarily because there's an issue on their end, but perhaps there's something we can shift in our leadership strategy that can help maintain the people that God gives us. So 4 forms of stagnation that ruins leaders. Number 1, exploring options without choosing any. These are these purposeless meetings we have that have no end result. You do not have an action plan when you leave. It's a lot of brainstorming, but no one makes a decision. Number 2, repetition minus purpose. So if you're doing a lot of busy work, but there's no purpose behind it, you don't celebrate the growth. You don't celebrate progress with the team. People are going to leave. Number 3, we talked about this earlier, procrastination under the disguise of preparation. It is nothing like following a leader who does not make a decision and who does not move forward. Leadership is synonymous with forward motion. You are not a leader if you are not moving forward. Stagnation, again, loves it when you're always getting ready to do something but never doing it. Stagnation loves it when you're always getting ready to do something but you never do it. And number 4, rejecting input. When you are not open to feedback from people, whether it's critical feedback or not, you're not open to feedback from people to help you enhance your leadership. Remove the word forward from your vocabulary, and all you have left is stagnation and death. Why? Because if you're in leadership, you got to move forward. You got to move forward. You got to move forward. You got to shift. There's another strategy coming. There's another strategy coming. If you want to see the victory in this fight, and you don't want to go through the same struggle again, you don't want to go through the motions every day, and you feel stuck. When you feel stuck, there's no current flow, there's no movement, there's no increase. The stagnation means the lack of development, advancements, and progressive movement. If you find yourself in that position, it's time to shift. And the only way to shift is you need a strategy. You need a strategy. All right. Now, I know I said a lot. But I believe that you got it. I believe it's going to stick. And I believe that you're going to do something about your stagnant place. You're not going to sit down and just hold your hands open and wait for it to fall in your lap for you to move. No, your shift requires your activity. Your shift, if you're going to shift, it requires you to co-labor with Christ. Your shift is going to require you to apply yourself, because there's a new strategy that God wants to give you so you can move from stagnation to success. Success, meaningful success, requires strategy. Hope is not a strategy. We got to go beyond that. God wants to give us a new plan. He wants to give us a new way to do what he's calling us to do so we can start to see the results that we want to see. Hey, welcome, guys. I see so many people logged on. It must be 3 o'clock. All right, welcome, Charles, Monique, Dawn, NASA. Hey, Pastor John is on. Marcel, Abraham, Tayella, Lady Howard is on. Welcome. Pastor Jason Furlow is on. Jamie is on. Thank you for joining me. Pastor Jonathan Shaw is on. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys got something out of this. Those of you who just logged on, I'm trying to log off. So make sure you go back and listen to this from the beginning. We talked again about the 5 S's. We talked about success, significance, survival, strategy, and stagnation. I wanted to jump into the 5 Ds, but I don't think we're going to have time to do that because it's going to take it's going to take a minute because I want to talk about stagnation in your dreams. Stagnation in your dreams. Because I know that that's one of the things that really hits home, because when you're believing for something and you don't see it happen, and you start to feel like, why should I continue to move forward? How can I move forward from here? And I want to talk about the myths of being a dreamer. Some of the myths that we have about how things are supposed to go. Because, you know, it's easy to dream. It's easy to dream, but to see the fulfillment of that is going to require some work. All right, so meet me next week, Tuesday at 2. Today I came on a little bit late because I was trying to find a space where we can have this conversation without being interrupted. But Tuesdays at 2. Why don't you follow me on Facebook? Find me, guys. Send me your friend request. Inbox me. Hey, I want to know more about this topic, or I want to talk to you on one-on-one so we can talk about a strategy to move me from stagnation to success. As a leadership coach, I do a lot of one-on-one sessions with leaders, and I sit down and I talk to them, because your stagnation, it begins to affect your team. Your stagnation becomes your ministry team stagnation, becomes your church stagnation. Organizations can be in stagnation. It does not end with just you. And so I do a lot of one-on-one, so I'll make myself available to do that. There's a 30-minute free consultation. We can talk and see if we're a good fit, so that we can sit down and begin to strategize why. If you're going to shift from stagnation to success, you need to download the new strategy of God so that you can do so. So that's good stuff. I want you guys to find me. If you want to look me up, I'm on CoachRamsay.com, CoachRamsay.com, Ramsay, not SEY. That's a Caucasian woman. That is not me, okay? Ramsay, CoachRamsay.com. And then also, hey, Stacy, definitely open to doing that. Then also, you can also reach out to me on powerupnetwork.org. You can find out more information about what we do. We do on-site workshops. If your team is in stagnation and you want to help shift that and you want to strategize, I'll be happy to come down to your location and meet with you and your ministry team, your auxiliary, your department, whatever you call it at your church. And I'll meet with you so that we can help strategize so that you can shift, not just you, but everybody on your team, so you can begin to see the results that you know God promised, okay? And so it's been real. I love you guys. Please go back, check this out from the beginning so that you can see everything we shared today about the 5S. Don't forget, in order to have meaningful success, it requires strategy. In order to shift from stagnation to success, it requires strategy. And God is waiting to give you a new strategy today. All right, guys, make sure you like this, send it out, share it, and I'll see you next week.